Recently, I've started to really question my faith in the Amazon FBA model. Like other sellers, I've had ups and downs, I've worked hard, taken risks, and invested quite a lot of money. But I keep coming up against challenge after challenge with no real financial reward to show. The opposite, in fact. So this is the start of a slightly longer post that I'm going to read you in a moment. And this is from someone that I worked with a couple of years ago. I mentored them with their first product. And they posted this on the FBA Elite forums about a week ago. And I've asked them if I can respond to this publicly, as he raises a number of very important issues that if you already sell on Amazon are probably concerned about. And if you don't sell on Amazon yet, you're probably concerned about as well. So I'm going to try and give you my honest take on all of these concerns. This isn't about disputing all of these because he raises some very valid points. And my goal with this channel has always been to give you a 100% honest take on what it's like to be an Amazon seller. So let's read through this post in its entirety, and then I'm going to come back and go through it bit by bit and address, or try to address, the concerns that he has raised. So let's carry on from where we got to. My goal was to initially generate 1K profit and then later 5K profit once I got rolling. Fair enough. But I'm realizing the reality of either is pretty unlikely due to ever increasing and difficult to understand Amazon fees, return costs, increased competition, ever-changing niche demand. Even just working out your profit or loss is very challenging. I know that some sellers have succeeded, but then even successful sellers are vulnerable to Amazon wrongly closing their accounts overnight and causing untold misery and financial ruin to the poor account holder, often unjustly so, with no logic or recourse. Seller support would quickly and easily destroy the patience of a saint. Amazon seem to almost telepathically spot any errors you might make, which are often based on their cryptic, nonsensical responses to you, and then severely punish you for it, but then encourage blatant theft and fraud from their customers only because it doesn't affect them. I just don't know if I can be comfortable with having tens of thousands of pounds sloshing around a system like this. And even if it did start to become profitable, this would require even more capital at risk. A product earning 2K a month after all costs must require around 20K plus in inventory every few months. Can anyone relate to this? If so, what are you doing about it? Continuing with Amazon FBA or doing something else? So let's go back to the top. Firstly, thinking of chucking it in. I completely understand why he has made this post. Reading through the post, it would make complete sense. If you put quite a few years into something, you spent a lot of time and money in it, and it just seems like you're facing challenge after challenge, it's completely natural that you may want to chuck it in. So I completely understand why this post has appeared. So let's jump to the bits that I actually want to talk about. So my goal was to initially generate 1K profit and then 5K profit once I got rolling. So he's talking about monthly profits, and this is a realistic goal. If you're starting Amazon FBA, it is a realistic goal to target 1K of profit per month from your first product. And it's actually a very, very common goal that new sellers that come to me have. So that was a reasonable target. And then scaling up to 5K profit again later, absolutely possible. You could do that with 2 or 3 products quite easily, depending on how heavy you want to go into each individual product. Someone might prefer to do this with 5 or 10 products, and another seller might prefer to do it with 2 or 3 products. But I'm realizing the reality of either is pretty unlikely due to, so this is where it gets a bit more involved. Ever increasing and difficult to understand Amazon fees, so for example, PPC, storage, VAT, etc. So Amazon fees increase every single year. If you go back, you'll see a video I released early this year that was actually in shock because some of the Amazon fees this year had gone down. But since I started selling back in 2018, every single year, the Amazon fees have gone up. So it has made it harder to make a profit. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. The difficult to understand Amazon fees, Amazon's reporting is all over the place. So it can be very difficult to get a clear picture, 100% what is going on. So this is something I see a lot of sellers struggle with, trying to figure out whether they're actually making a profit or not. And you can see here he's got PPC, storage, VAT, etc. So just to break it down with Amazon fees, the 2 main Amazon fees you'll be paying are your fulfillment fee. That's the fee you pay to Amazon to package up your product and then send it to the customer and manage any returns. You do have a separate storage fee as well, but the fulfillment fee is then basically managing your inventory. And then there's the referral fee, which is the fee you pay for selling on Amazon, which for most niches is 15%. You then have PPC, which is what you're going to pay to actually promote and launch your product, and hopefully you can reduce that a lot after the launch stage. And then VAT. So this post is from someone that actually was caught up in some of the VAT changes. So when they started selling on Amazon, Amazon didn't charge VAT on their fees to new sellers. And shortly after that, Amazon changed the rules. So he got hit by that once. And then later on, after launching his second product, he actually hit the VAT threshold. So his profits got squeezed even more. So potentially his first product or first couple of products that were maybe chosen in environment and calculations were based on not being VAT registered and not paying VAT on the fees, all of a sudden aren't making enough profit at the moment to offset the other issues that he's raised in this post. But certainly it can be difficult to understand all of the Amazon fees. Return costs, including customers stealing and AMZ, so Amazon letting them. So return costs, they are frustrating. It is part of selling on Amazon. And if your return rate is reasonable, and by reasonable, I would say somewhere between 1% to 3%, then often it's not really an issue because you have so much, providing you've chosen the correct product and you have a suitable margin, you just see return costs as part of the business. That will happen in any retail business. So it is frustrating having returns, but it is part of being a seller of products. You are going to get that. Now, a bit here about customers stealing and Amazon letting them. So in some circumstances, and you will see some of this on the Amazon forums, customers will say that a product wasn't delivered. And then we don't necessarily get reimbursed as sellers. So it's very hard to prove otherwise. And Amazon pretty much will always side with the customer. So that's why he's saying Amazon letting them stealing. It's not something I've really ever had an issue with over the past 7 years. And it's the first person that I've worked with. And I've probably worked with, I would say, if not hundreds, it's got to be close to 1,000 sellers I've worked with over the past probably 4 or 5 years since I started doing mentorship. This is the first post that's really focused on this as an issue. But I'm not saying it isn't an issue, because you go into the Amazon seller forums, you will see other sellers, especially ones that are fulfilling products themselves and doing sort of lower quantities and higher margins. They get hit a lot harder when they have a return like this. So it is an issue that does take place, but if your margins are right, it's one of those acceptable trade-offs of getting access to the biggest e-commerce platform and biggest customer base on the planet. Increased competition. I've addressed this in many previous videos. Yes, more and more sellers all the time coming onto Amazon, but often I find the competition is quite low quality. So I've got products that I launched 5, 6, 7 years ago that are still selling. So increased competition doesn't mean you're going to lose sales if that competition isn't better than you. If you've still got a superior product, you're still going to do well. Ever-changing niche demand, that's just part of the game. I don't think there's much you can do with that. Customers' behaviors are always going to change. Demand's going to go up and down throughout the year. Price points are going to evolve. Niches are going to evolve. And your product either evolves with it, or sometimes a product becomes non-viable. And I've had this with my own products in the past. I'll be selling great for a couple of years, and all of a sudden that niche changes for either, could be 1, 2, 3, many reasons. And all of a sudden it's not viable. So you can either adapt the product, or you can stop selling in the niche if you think it's not worth selling in it any longer. Even just working out your profit or loss is very challenging, which comes back to the first point about understanding the Amazon fees. And I think the most frustrating part of this is there is no one profit calculator out there that you can use to see how your Amazon business is doing. Believe me, I've tried so many of them. And there's also, it varies so much on the individual seller, what they want to know. So I think there are 3 ways really to look at your profits of Amazon. The way I do it, I do a top level calculation when I'm choosing a product. And that top level calculation is based on the landed cost of the product. So that's the cost to manufacture it, ship it to the UK, your customs duty, and the VAT. So that's to get your product to the Amazon fulfillment center. So I base my profit calculations on that, and I want to see at least £7 profit per unit on that product for me to consider it, with a margin of at least 30% on the sale price and an ROI of 100%. That's my goal anyway. The actual final results will be lower due to the other fees. And then at the end of the month, if I want to see how I'm doing, I take the number of sales. So say I've made 100 sales and I've got a £7 profit margin, so I've got £700 of profit, and I deduct whatever I spent on PPC and storage that month to tell me pretty much roughly how I'm doing. Other sellers like to build or want to use a calculator that has that plus all of the storage fees, PPCs, and do all the calculations for them. And then other sellers want all of that plus all of their accountancy fees, Helium 10 fees, all of it to be taken into account. So it's almost impossible to say, go and use this calculator, because every seller wants a different output. So you need to decide how you want the figures to be calculated for you, what information is important to you. And my recommendation for any seller would be actually to build your own calculator. If you spend a couple of hours in Excel, you can use ChatGPT to help you with the formulas. You can put together your own calculator, and then if you want to pump in things like your PPC and storage fees, you can do that on a monthly basis. You can go to the Amazon report, and then you can get a much more accurate picture of how your product is doing. But absolutely, even just working out your profit or loss is very challenging. It's not a quick process. I know that some sellers have succeeded. Absolutely, I know loads and loads of sellers have succeeded. And I also know, not loads and loads, but I know a number of sellers that have failed as well for many, many different reasons. But even successful sellers are vulnerable to Amazon wrongly closing their accounts overnight and causing untold misery and financial ruin to the poor account holder, often unjustly so, with no logic or recourse. And if you go back and if you look at many of my videos over the past 7 years, I have highlighted my concerns around Amazon. And let me just read this next line. Seller support would quickly and easily destroy the patience of a saint. So seller support for sellers on Amazon is absolutely terrible. And this is true. You do see stories of some sellers having their accounts or products randomly suspended for no reason. Often there is a reason behind it, but sometimes there is the odd seller that just does get a rough hand, really, and their account does get suspended. However, and I covered this in a video from a few weeks ago, I've been doing this for 7 years now. I've been working with hundreds of different sellers. And honestly, I'm struggling to think of a person who had this issue and then there wasn't a reason behind it. But I'm not saying this is impossible, because I've seen plenty of stories on the Amazon forums of sellers who appear to have no reason why it happened to them. So it is something to be aware of. I'm not saying it does not happen. Amazon seem to almost telepathically spot any errors you might make, which are often based on their cryptic and nonsensical responses to you, and then severely punish you for it, but then encourage blatant theft and fraud from the customers, which is going back to the earlier point, only because it doesn't affect them. So I'm just going to focus on the first half of this. So when it says Amazon seem to almost telepathically, he's talking about the Amazon algorithms. So the back end of the Seller Central has various algorithms built in to try and catch sellers doing dodgy things, and often these misfire and catch things that aren't actually breaking any terms of service, and which are often based on their cryptic, nonsensical responses to you. If you contact seller support, you often get templated responses, and I've seen seller support constantly giving out incorrect advice. Even, for example, last year there were some VAT changes, and we're still seeing seller support give out incorrect information about those VAT changes now, and we're like a year later. So this is why it's so important to be part of a community or have contact with other sellers. So when you've got issues, don't trust seller support. Reach out to other people that are actually selling on Amazon, and they hopefully can help you. I just don't know if I can be comfortable with having tens of thousands of pounds sloshing around in a system like this. I completely agree. When I started Amazon, I chucked a lot of money into the business, and I had a product suspended, which was actually rightly so in the end because I had a trademark infringement, but it made me question having so much money tied up, and then an algorithm can suddenly suspend your product. So I diversified very quickly without going too heavy into any individual products, and also developed other income streams as well. I always recommend to anyone, never let Amazon become 100% of your income. It should not be your only income stream. It is there to either top up your income or be part of a more diversified income, so that if one of those incomes gets taken out for any reason, because any job, any business you have, there's always a risk that something can go wrong. That's why it's so important to be diversified. And then actually when you are selling on Amazon, it kind of frees you up a bit emotionally as well, as you aren't 100% dependent on it. And even if it did start to become profitable, this would require even more capital at risk. Yes, a product earning 2K profit per month after all costs must require around 20K in inventory every few months. So when I read this, I went and looked at one of my products that makes about 2K per month. And I order 3 months of inventory at a time. And I think my landed cost for that particular product is, the FOB cost is $6.90. So by the time it's landed, you're probably paying about $10 per product. So about $10,000, I would say I spend. So the capital requirements aren't that great. I reckon for 10K or less, you could make 2K profit per month. Can anyone relate to this? If so, what are you doing about it? Continuing with Amazon FBA or doing something else? And a few other sellers, if you go to FBAelite.com, click on the forums, click on the general FBA chat, or you can use the search, and you'll find this post here, which is thinking of chucking it in. And you can see the responses from some other sellers, including one of my other takes on this, which is focusing purely on the profit aspect. So I'd recommend you guys go and check that out. as it's super interesting to hear from other sellers that are doing okay. But I wanted to share this with you guys and also respond to it personally, as like I say, it was someone that I worked with a couple of years ago. We worked together for months and months developing their first product, and to see them struggling, it's obviously, I want to see everyone that I work with succeed, but unfortunately that is impossible. So I think he's at a junction now where he may be looking at other products that hopefully are going to be more profitable, because ultimately, if you're making enough profit, a lot of the issues that we just spoke about do tend to fade into the background. And I don't want to be dismissive of them, but that is generally what happens. Being an Amazon seller, Amazon FBA is far from the perfect model, but the opportunity is absolutely massive if you can deal with the imperfections and have enough profit margin to offset the bits that make it less than perfect. So if I haven't put you off starting your own Amazon FBA business, I'm going to pop up a step-by-step guide now, which will show you everything you need to do to make your first £2,000 per month. I'm going to pop that up now, and I'll see you guys over there.